Greetings, seekers of eternal truth. Today we gather once again in this sacred space where restless minds find nourishment and thirsty souls drink from the fountain of ancestral wisdom. Welcome to yet another journey through the veils of illusion, where we will contemplate together the mysteries of true freedom and the paradoxical nature of human control over existence. You who have been searching for answers in the most distant places may find today right here what your soul has been seeking for so long. If this is your first time with us, know that this is a space of deep exploration where ancient traditions dialogue with the modern needs of the spirit. Stay until the end of this exposition, for the most valuable treasures often reveal themselves when we least expect in the final moments of our quest. The question of freedom has intrigued the brightest minds since the first human being raised his eyes to the stars and wondered about his position in the grand cosmic scheme. The ancient Egyptians represented this quest through the symbol of the Ankh, the Ansata cross that symbolizes eternal life, but which can also be interpreted as the key to the freedom of the soul in the Hermetic tradition. Hermes Trismegistus taught that man is a microcosm, a miniature universe, and that his freedom lies precisely in understanding the laws that govern both the macro and the microcosm. The chains that imprison us are ironically forged by our own hands, through our incessant need to control every aspect of our existence. In our modern times, this illusion of control has become even more pronounced with technology, creating the false impression that we can bend reality to our will, like little gods in a digital world. But true wisdom, the one preserved in the mystery schools and transmitted from master to disciple through the millennia, teaches us exactly the opposite. Authentic freedom does not come from expanded control, but from the conscious abandonment of the very need to control. Let us observe for a moment. The Eastern traditions in the Tao Te Ching Lao Tzu presents us the concept of Wu Wei, often translated as non-action or effortless action, which represents perfect harmony with the natural flow of the universe. This philosophy suggests that when we cease to fight against the current of life and learn to flow with it, we find a freedom that transcends our limited understanding. The Taoist sage does not seek to control the river of existence. He becomes the river in the same way Zen Buddhist masters teach the concept of Mushin, the mind without mind, where true freedom arises when we abandon conscious control and allow our deeper nature to manifest spontaneously. There is a Zen story that perfectly illustrates this principle. An archer master was asked about his secret to hitting the target with perfection. Every shot, his answer was, "When I draw the bow, it is not I who shoots for at the perfect moment. I disappear and the arrow simply finds its way." This is the paradox that confronts us to have perfect control. We must completely abandon the idea of control. The Kabbalistic tradition, this profound matrix of mysticism that underlies much of Western esotericism, also offers valuable insights on this matter. In the diagram of the Tree of Life, we find 10 Sephiroth divine emanations that represent different aspects of existence. Malkuth, the lowest sphere, represents the material world, where we seek to exert control, while Kether, the crown at the top of the tree, symbolizes the primordial unity, where control and the controller become one. The path of spiritual ascension in Kabbalah is not about gaining more control over the world, but about progressively transcending the very duality between controller and controlled. When the Kabbalist reaches the state of Ayin, the divine nothingness, he discovers that true freedom lies precisely in the abandonment of all pretense of individual control. The great Kabbalist masters like Isaac Luria in the 16th century taught that the divine contraction, that Tzimtzum, was the act by which God partially withdrew himself to create a space where creation could exist with free will. Paradoxically, it was through this act of renouncing absolute control that the possibility of freedom arose in the cosmos. At this moment, allow me to pause our exploration of spiritual mysteries to ask something that perhaps no one has truly asked you before. When you look within, in the hours of silence, when no one else is watching, what is the spiritual void that echoes most deeply in your being, that quest you may have never shared out loud? You know, many souls walk for decades carrying unanswered questions, seeking deeper connections in silence, believing they are alone in their journey, but you are not alone. There are countless other people watching now who feel exactly the same inner calling. If you feel comfortable, share in the comments. I seek to understand the purpose of my existence beyond the material veil, or simply tell your own spiritual journey. Your comment may be exactly the light someone else needs to take the next step in their own quest. Now let us return to our contemplation on the true nature of freedom. In the alchemical tradition, often misunderstood by modern historians, we find a fascinating parallel with our quest for true freedom. The process of transmuting lead into gold was not, as many suppose, a mere pursuit of material wealth, but rather a profound metaphor for the transformation of the soul. Lead, heavy and opaque, represents our untransmuted nature trapped in the illusions of control, and the separate ego, gold, on the other hand, symbolizes enlightened consciousness, free from the chains of identification with the false self. The alchemist does not impose his will upon matter. He merely creates the necessary conditions for the natural transformation to occur. He understands that the great work is not something we do, but something we allow to happen through us. As the alchemical masters used to say, solve et coagula, dissolve, and coagulate first. We must dissolve the false structures of control we have built, so that a new organization more harmonious with the cosmic laws may crystallize naturally in Stoic philosophy. So misinterpreted in our modern times, we find another glimpse of this eternal truth when Epictetus stated that we should concern ourselves only with what is within our power. He was not instructing us to exert maximum control over these areas, but rather to recognize the futility of tormenting ourselves with that which is beyond our control. The genuine Stoic is not the one who rigidly controls his emotions and circumstances, but the one who flows with circumstances while maintaining inner serenity. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, even while holding the highest political power in the known world of his time, wrote in his meditations about the importance of recognizing the limits of his control and aligning himself with the universal nature. It is profoundly significant that a man who could order the death of thousands with a single gesture understood that true freedom comes not from the exercise of power, but from harmonization with the higher laws of the cosmos in the mystical traditions of Christianity, often obscured by the excessive emphasis on institutional dogma. We find echoes of this same wisdom when Jesus stated that he who seeks to save his life will lose it, and he who loses his life will find it. He was alluding to this same paradox of freedom through the abandonment of control. Christian mystics such as Meister Eckhart and St. John of the Cross spoke of the need for a complete emptying, a dark night of the soul, where all our structures of control and identity are dissolved, so that we may experience union with the divine in the Philokalia, that collection of mystical texts from the Orthodox tradition. The Desert Fathers speak repeatedly of the need for nepsis, the spiritual sobriety that allows us to observe our thoughts without identifying with them or trying to control them. Obsessively modern psychology, especially in its deeper currents such as the analytical psychology of Jung, has rediscovered these ancient truths in a language more accessible to contemporary man. The Jungian process of individuation is not about the ego gaining more control over the psyche, but about the ego recognizing its limits and establishing a harmonious relationship with the self, the organizing center of psychic totality. Jung understood, through his in-depth study of esoteric and alchemical traditions, that freedom, genuine psychological freedom, comes not from reinforced control, but from a conscious surrender to the natural process of soul development. In his writings on synchronicity, he explored how seemingly random events often reveal a meaningful pattern when we abandon our obsession with causal control and open ourselves to a broader understanding of reality. Neurosis, according to Jung, is essentially a problem of excessive control, a rigidity that blocks the natural flow of psychic energy. In modern physics, especially in quantum mechanics, we find a fascinating parallel with this ancestral wisdom. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle demonstrates that on a subatomic level, the more precisely we try to determine the position of a particle, the less we can know about its momentum, and vice versa. There is a fundamental limit to how much we can control and know simultaneously. In the same way, chaos theory shows us how complex systems can be fundamentally unpredictable, despite following deterministic laws. The famous metaphor of the butterfly effect illustrates how small variations in initial conditions can lead to enormous differences in final outcomes. These scientific discoveries are not merely theoretical curiosities. They are manifestations in the domain of modern science of that same truth. The ancient mystics intuited the universe is fundamentally uncontrollable in its totality, and our freedom lies in harmonizing with its deeper laws, not in trying to subjugate them to our limited will. Let us now consider how these truths can be applied in our daily lives, for esoteric knowledge that cannot be lived remains sterile, a mere accumulation of concepts, without the transformative power of direct experience in our personal relationships. How often does the desire to control the other, to mold them according to our expectations, lead not to harmony, but to conflict and distance? True love, as taught in the highest spiritual traditions, is neither possessive nor controlling. It is a space of freedom where we allow the other to be authentically who they are in the professional sphere. We observe how rigid hierarchical structures based on external control often stifle creativity and innovation. The most dynamic and adaptable organizations are precisely those that understand the value of autonomy and self-organization in our relationship with nature. The illusion that we can infinitely control and exploit the planet's resources has led us to the brink of an unprecedented ecological catastrophe. Indigenous wisdom, so often disregarded by modern technological arrogance, has always emphasized our interdependence with all beings and the need to live in harmony with natural cycles, even in our relationship with our own body and mind. The paradigm of control reveals its limitations. The more rigidly we try to control our thoughts through suppression, the more power they gain over us, a phenomenon well documented by contemporary psychology. The most effective approaches to personal transformation do not involve reinforced control, but rather the cultivation of a witness consciousness that observes without judgment or resistance in meditation. When we cease to struggle against the incessant flow of thoughts and simply observe them pass like clouds in the sky, we experience a freedom that no mental control exercise could provide. Similarly, in bodily practices like Tai Chi or yoga, fluidity and grace come not from rigid muscular control, but from alignment with the natural laws of movement and energy. In the ancient mystery schools, the neophyte was gradually led through a series of initiations that freed him from the illusions of egoic control. In ancient Greece, the Eleusinian mysteries led the initiate to experience a symbolic death and rebirth where all their previous mental constructs were dissolved. In the Orphic mysteries, the participant learned to transcend identification with the physical body and recognize their immortal divine nature. In shamanic traditions, around the world, the shaman apprentice undergoes an experience of symbolic dismemberment, where their old self is completely undone, so that a new self aligned with the cosmic forces can emerge. In all these traditions, we find the same fundamental pattern. True freedom does not come through an expanded control of the ego, but through a death and transcendence of the controlling ego. The great initiates understood that the reality we perceive is only the outermost layer of an infinitely complex cosmos. In Vedantic cosmology, this phenomenal world is Maya, not in the simplistic sense of a complete illusion, but as a conditioned and limited manifestation of the unconditioned Brahman. Our quest for control is fundamentally futile, because we operate with a partial understanding of the laws that govern existence. As the Upanishad says, "He who thinks he knows does not know. He who knows he does not know knows." This attitude of epistemic humility is the first step towards true wisdom. When we recognize the fundamental limits of our knowledge and control, paradoxically, we open ourselves to a deeper understanding and a more perfect harmony with the whole esoteric astrology. Far beyond the popular simplifications we find in magazines and newspapers, offers a sophisticated system for understanding our relationship with the greater cosmic cycles. The ancient astrologers did not see the planets as mechanical causes of events in our lives, but as indicators of archetypal patterns that manifest simultaneously in the sky and on earth. Following the Hermetic principle as above, so below, the sage does not try to resist the influence of the planets, but to understand their deeper meaning and consciously align with the cosmic cycles. Saturn, often feared as the great restrictor, is also the great teacher, imposing limits that paradoxically free us from dispersion and lead us to mastery. Jupiter expands, but without Saturnine structure, this expansion can lead to dissolution. Each planet has its role in the great cosmic drama, and our freedom consists not in escaping their influences, but in consciously participating in the celestial dance. In the tradition of the Egyptian mysteries, the initiate was confronted with the challenge of the weighing of the heart in the Hall of Ma'at. If their heart was heavier than the feather of truth and justice, they could not proceed to the higher realms. This powerful metaphor teaches us that true freedom is only possible when our inner being is in perfect harmony with the cosmic order represented by Mut. The heavy heart is the one burdened with the weights of the desire for control, attachment to outcomes, resistance to the natural flow of life. When we abandon these illusions, our heart becomes light as a feather, and we are free to ascend to the higher realms of consciousness. The Egyptian Book of the Dead was not, as some Egyptologists have mistakenly interpreted, a mere manual for the afterlife, but a profound guide for the soul's journey through the various dimensions of existence, both during life and after the transformation. We call death the Eleusinian mysteries, celebrated in ancient Greece for nearly 2,000 years, culminated in the silent contemplation of a single ear of wheat, a profound symbol of the eternal cycle of death and rebirth. The initiate understood not intellectually, but through direct realization that just as the grain must abandon its form to give rise to a new plant, so too must we abandon our limited egoic structures to be reborn at a higher level of consciousness. The goddess Persephone, forced to spend part of the year in the underworld, represents the soul that must periodically submerge into the depths to find the treasures hidden in the shadows. Resisting this natural cycle is to create unnecessary suffering. Embracing it consciously is to discover freedom within the very cosmic necessity. In modern initiatory societies, such as esoteric Freemasonry and the Rosicrucians, we find the preservation of these same principles through symbols and rituals that speak directly to the deep unconscious. The Masonic apprentice learns to polish the rough stone of his personality, not through a violent imposition of will, but through a gradual process of removing what is superfluous, allowing the perfect form that already exists potentially in the stone to manifest. The Rosicrucian alchemist understands that inner transmutation is not something we do, but something we allow to happen when we create the proper internal conditions. In both traditions, we find the emphasis on silence, patience, and humility as essential virtues for spiritual development, qualities that contrast strongly with the egoic desire for immediate control and spectacular results. In order for us to truly transcend the illusion of control, we must understand its deep psychological roots. Our obsession with control fundamentally arises from fear, particularly the fear of death and impermanence. As beings conscious of our own mortality, we seek to create structures of permanence and security in a universe characterized by constant change. The ego, this mental construct necessary for our functioning in the world, but often confused with our true being, fiercely resists the idea of its own dissolution. However, as all great spiritual traditions teach us, what we truly are infinitely transcends this limited identity with which we identify our essential consciousness, called Atman in Vedanta, Buddha, nature in Buddhism, or the Christ within in Christian. Mysticism is neither born nor dies, neither increases nor decreases when we realize our identity with this eternal reality. The fear of death loses its power over us, and with it, the compulsion for control. It is significant that in near-death experiences reported by people from various cultures and beliefs, a recurring theme is the dissolution of fear and the deep acceptance of the flow of life. Many describe a sense of expansion beyond the limits of the individual ego and an intuitive understanding that everything is exactly as it should be, even in its apparent imperfection. These transformative experiences often result in a radical shift in values and priorities, with a significant decrease in the need for control and an increased ability to live the present moment in its fullness. Similarly, those who work with terminal patients report that at the end of life, few people regret not having exercised more control. On the contrary, many express the wish they had lived more freely, with less concern about meeting external expectations and more courage to follow the dictates of their heart. If you have been following this exposition up to this point, dear seeker, perhaps you have already glimpsed the central paradox of our existence. The more stubbornly we seek freedom through control, the more deeply we become entangled in the webs of illusion and suffering. True freedom arises when we understand, not just intellectually, but in every fiber of our being, that we are simultaneously infinitely small and infinitely vast, like drops in the ocean of universal consciousness. Our individuality is real, but relative, meaningful, but not absolute. Our freedom does not consist in asserting the separation of this drop, trying to control its destiny in isolation, but in recognizing our essential identity with the ocean itself. As the poet Rumi says you are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. This recognition does not lead us to a fatalistic passivity as some might fear, but to a form of action that is wiser and more effective when we act from a center of inner stillness aligned with the deepest currents of life. We become instruments through which cosmic intelligence can operate without obstruction. Our action becomes what the Hindus call karma yoga action, performed without attachment to the fruits, or what the Taoists call wei wu wei doing. Without doing, this effortless action arises naturally when we abandon the posture of controller and allow ourselves to be channels for something greater than ourselves, like water, which in its apparent softness can eventually wear down the hardest rock. Our influence in the world paradoxically becomes more powerful when we abandon the rigidity of control and learn to flow with life instead of resisting it. Friends who seek the truth beyond appearances, as we approach the end of this exploration, I would like to propose a simple but profound practice for one day. Observe attentively your need to control both in external situations and in your internal processes. Notice how your body tenses when things do not go as planned, how your mind stirs trying to find solutions or assign blame. Then consciously experiment with letting go, not in a resigned way, but with lucid and attentive acceptance. See what happens when you allow life to unfold without your constant interference. This small experiment may be the beginning of a deep transformation in your relationship with existence. If this message resonated with something inside you, if these words awakened a dormant intuition or cast new light on your existential questions, share this reflection with other seekers who may benefit from it. Leave your like as a sign of recognition for the work we have done here, and subscribe to our channel to continue this journey of exploring the eternal mysteries. Your questions and reflections in the comments not only enrich our community, but also inspire future contemplations on the themes that most deeply touch the human soul. Let us remember that knowledge that is not shared remains incomplete, for it is in the genuine exchange between open minds and sincere hearts that wisdom finds its full blossoming. May we all, in our journey through this veil of mysteries and wonders that we call life, discover the true freedom that resides not in obsessive control, but in the harmonious dance with the cosmic rhythm, like the stars that follow their predestined courses and yet shine with their own light. May we find our uniqueness precisely in our conscious participation in the great celestial ballet. In the silence of your deepest heart, beyond all words and concepts, resides the key to this freedom we seek. Turn your attention inward, gently, but with unwavering determination, and you will discover that the door of the cage was never really locked. The freedom you seek is already your essential nature. It remains only to recognize what has always been true in the immortal words inscribed on the Temple of Delphi. Know thyself, and you will know the universe and the gods.